From ABC News Live, the death of George Floyd. Derek Chauvin on trial.
Fairly historical.
There you have it, Judge Peter Cahill listening to concerns presented by the defense there about the conduct of the prosecution during their rebuttal. He said that he thought he addressed it appropriately while the prosecution was delivering its rebuttal to the jury. Of course, the prosecution had issues with the defense and their interpretation of the connection of the law and causation, and they clarified on their part. That's why they get a rebuttal. I want to bring in Dan Abrams to clarify on both points. First of all, Dan, what you just heard there from the defense, is that going to go anywhere?
No, I mean, this is closing arguments, very different from the opening statement where you have to be a little more careful. These are arguments. That's what they're making. They're making an argument. They're saying, here's what we believe the evidence shows or doesn't show. We think that they're misinterpreting the evidence, etc. Happens all the time in closing arguments. The notion that somehow this is subject for a mistrial, it's a frivolous argument.
And the central theme of that rebuttal from the prosecution, Dan, is that what they had to do, their responsibility, was to show that the defendant's action, putting a knee to George Floyd's neck, was a substantial causal factor in George Floyd's death. Not the only factor, but a substantial causal factor. And he said causation is so simple, you need only look at the 9-year-old girl who testified, get off him. That's what she said at the scene. And then she testified to the same sentiment, saying, I was sad, I was kind of mad with what I saw.
And I think that was an important clarification in this rebuttal case coming from the prosecution, is to say, first of all, they got the law wrong on whether it can be one of a number of things, which the answer is yes, it can be a number of things as long as Derek Chauvin's actions were a substantial cause. But then he went on to rule out the other causes, to say this is why this isn't relevant, this is why that isn't relevant. And I think he made another very important point, which is to say the defense kept referring to what a reasonable officer would do. And they would presume that Derek Chauvin's actions were that of a reasonable officer. And you heard Prosecutor Blackwell there say, well, why do we presume that his actions are reasonable when we're watching conduct that the prosecutors say is unreasonable? Final point here, defense, I think, missed an opportunity in going through the law at the end of their closing argument, meaning the 3 charges. One of the defense's best hopes here is potentially for a manslaughter conviction instead of murder, or at least a debate amongst the jurors between those charges, et cetera. And I think by not going through some of the details there, not sort of encouraging the jurors to at the least move away from the murder charges, I think that they missed an opportunity.
All right, Dan Abrams with us all day long. Dan, thank you. Let's bring in Sunny Hostin for a final thought here before we wrap up. Also an ABC News legal analyst, co-host of The View, and a former prosecutor herself. And Sunny, the central theme there from prosecutors, even right up and through their rebuttal, is you can believe your eyes. Jerry Blackwell said that during opening statements. He said it again during the final word from the prosecution. You can believe your eyes. It was what you thought it was. It was a homicide, which is what the medical examiner had said. And it seems the central theme from the defense today was you have to take into account what came before the 9 minutes, 29 seconds, what Officer Chauvin arrived to witness there at the scene, what he had heard before he was initially dispatched, and to take into account what happened in addition to what they have seen at home. And whether or not that works for the jury remains to be seen. In the end, how effective were both sides today?
Well, look, the prosecution is asking the jury to do what I ask jurors to do every time they went into the jury room, and that is to take their common sense with them. The video here is the strongest piece of evidence I've ever seen in a case against a police officer. In this case, the prosecution asked these jurors to believe their eyes, to believe that a reasonable officer, David, would not kneel the life out of someone, a man who they were sworn to protect and serve, would not kneel for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, that those are not the actions of a reasonable man. The prosecution did its job today. The defense, I think, certainly missed a lot of opportunities, but did not have a lot to work with. I think that the fact that the defense consistently played that video, which I believe was the star witness for the prosecution over and over and over again and played the video of George Floyd losing his life at the hands of former officer Derek Chauvin was a mistake of grave proportions. And I just want to end with this. The prosecution said face down on the pavement for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. The pavement beneath him was as unyielding as the man on top of him, pushing him down. This wasn't a case against the police, but one man, Derek Chauvin. He is not on trial for who he is on trial for what he did.
Sunny Hostin with us all day long as well. Sunny, our thanks to you. And again, the responsibility now in the hands of the jury, 12 members who will now be sequestered in Minneapolis until they have come to a decision. You heard the judge dismissing 2 others, the alternates, though he asked them to come into his chambers so that he could talk with them after hearing this case. But again, the prosecution closing, the defense closing, and now we wait to hear what this jury will decide. We'll have much more coming up on World News Tonight a short time from now, and I should note that for many of you, your local news comes your way next. I'm David Muir in New York. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.